Welcome, everybody. If I haven't met you, my name is Erin Foyle. I am the PL consultant or professional learning consultant for Infinite Campus for the Northwest District. And with me, I have Karen Jimison, who is the PL consultant for the Western District. And so we've been working with a lot of you on the entry of data for the Helene Recovery Program that you had in your district this past summer. So you guys have been putting that data in and making that summer school calendar and getting all that data in. There's just two small pieces of data that we still have left. And I'm going to turn it over to Karen for just a minute to talk a little bit about some of the documentation that we have for you.
Thank you. All right. So in the slide presentation that we put in the chat, there is a link to, of course, our knowledge base article about summer school. And we do ask that you not share those links out to general public. For right now, it's just specifically for the Helene Recovery Program. For entry. We will be editing that for next year, but for now, the first link that you have takes you to our summer school article. You've probably seen a couple things get updated in the last couple weeks with that information, but we do have, of course, if you haven't done the summer school setup, hopefully you already have, that information should already be in there. The new pieces that we have for you are number 7 and 8. So 7 is about the summer education program. That's one of the last, there's 2 last steps, but the program is going to be a key factor in making sure that your students are going to be showing on the report that we're going to be looking at towards the end of our webinar today. This summer school program, the first part walks you through how to add the summer education program. And Erin's going to kind of show us this from a different perspective with actually importing using the state and federal update wizard when we actually show you a little bit in our training site. But this walks you through a few of the key pieces that we need to have in adding in our summer education program if you're going to do it individually. Now, you may have already done this. This article was out, it's been out for about a week now, I think. But you may not have because I didn't tell anybody about it. So it was just kind of one of those surprises, sorry. But as we were working through the processes, the summer education program has been added in. It's actually under the student information area and state programs called summer education. So that's going to be the location that it will appear for all of the students. There is not a flag associated with this program. It is just strictly a state program. And so as you go into that student's information, if you're going to work with an individual student, Erin's navigating there for us, but it's under the state programs and under summer education program. So when we are first coming in, you may not have anything in here because we didn't tell you to add it in until just now, but you'll click new in that application, and then you're going to add in the fields that are needed. You'll need the start date. So this should be the start date the student was in the program. Most of the time, that's going to be the first date of their enrollment. So if you were keeping up with their enrollment information for the summer school calendar, you'll make sure that you add that in. I will say for programs, they work outside of calendar context. So it doesn't necessarily matter that your context, it might be 24-25 or 25-26, but to be able to find them as a student, you'll want to make sure that you're in the 24-25 calendar. It'll just make it a little easier if you're going to go student by student. But just make sure that your start date matches the date that the student started in the program or their enrollment, and that the end date matches the date that they finished the program or their enrollment. Now, every student that you offered a program for must have a program. So even if you offered and they declined, then you have to make sure that they all have a program. For those that declined, you'll check that parent guardian decline checkbox. For the start and end dates for those students, you'll want to make sure that that is the full length of the program. So whatever your start date of your calendar to the end date of the calendar. In this example, we started on May 26th and they ended on August 8th. That was a very long summer program. The rest of you guys that I was looking at was fairly short. So, but just make sure that for the declined ones that you add in the start and end date of the program and check that parent guardian declined box. For those that attended, though, you'll want to make sure that the checkbox is unchecked. Then everyone has to have, no matter whether they declined or attended, they must have the priority. So here's where you'll indicate whether it was a first priority, second, or open enrollment. And all of these programs that we're adding in this example for today have to be under the educational program of Helene or HLP. So under that educational program drop down, there are several others, but you must select HLP for them to show up on the reporting correctly that we're going to look at a little bit later. And then the last piece that you have to add in is the assessments used. So here is where you will see that expanded list. I believe Erin's email that she sent out towards the end of last week, reminding you about today's webinar, went over the fact that we were able to expand out those different assessments to offer the breakdown between math and reading options. And so whichever ones that you offered for those students, you can select those. If you did more than one, make sure you select each one, or if you only did the one, just add that there. And then you can add any comments for the program that you want. And as soon as you've added that in, you click save. And so now you have added in an individual program. All that's lovely, but if you had several kids attending, it might be a little bit easier for us to kind of import that in all at one time. If you already had been keeping up with that information outside of the system in a spreadsheet, you just have to add these few fields that were included. Make sure you have a start and end date in your file. In that parent decline checkbox, you want to make sure that you either have a 0 or a 1 in your file. And Erin's going to show us an example of a file option for the program. In our knowledge now, we don't talk about the specifics of which fields are required because every program is a little bit different. That's why we're telling you in this webinar today. But you'll need to make sure that they have a student number. It is always helpful to make sure that you have a last name and first name because, make sure you have the right kids. In that first priority or priority offered, you'll want to make sure that you put in those codes. You can enter anything here because when we work with the import wizard, you'll be able to map that to a matching field within Infinite Campus and match the program dropdowns we just looked at. But if you already have it in shortened format, the priority offered will be fine. So that's first priority, open enrollment, or second priority. And then in your parent declined field, every one of those has to either have the 1 that was a declined or a 0 where they actually attended. And we'll see why that's important when we look at the import wizard in a moment. And then each of them needs to have a start and an end date. So again, that could vary based on the different logistics of your programs. That should match their enrollments, right? Because what if I was not in a program that is not there? But just make sure that I have both start and end date for the declined. It should be the full date of the program. And then any others should match what they actually attended. Your educational program should be HLP. That's that's a copy down. That one does not change. Everyone has to have the same educational program. For your assessment used, even if you had more than one, that is fine. Just make sure it's in 2 separate columns. That will make it a little bit easier when we go to use the import wizard because you can't map a comma inside of one column. We tried it, it doesn't work. So make sure that you have the 2 different assessments there. And then if you wanted to add a comment or had notated comments about that student's program, then you can have that in. I believe there was a comment limit, but I don't remember what was on the screen. But just keep it within, maybe 50,000 characters or so. I don't know. But
maybe under 300.
Okay, maybe 300. I don't know. But just make sure that you have all those. You do want to save this as a CSV file so that we can use it in the import. So you'll just save as and make sure that it is a comma delimited file, CSV. And so then once you have that, so if you had a list of the students somewhere that you were maintaining originally, then all you have to really do is add these fields in for those students that attended or didn't attend that were offered. And then we can use our federal state import option, wizard, whatever that field is called, that tool, and import that information in. If you did not keep track of it outside in an Excel format or you had it in a PDF, one thing to kind of get you started would be to maybe do a quick ad hoc within that district or that summer school program where you pull out the information, really student number and name. Erin's going to show us here under data viewer. There's a real quick way to just quickly add a new viewer option. You're going to choose report and student and hit OK and name your data viewer. So this is a quicker way than ad hoc. It works in the same purpose, but it's just kind of giving us a really quick value. And so she's naming this all student list. And what you do want to make sure you take off active today equals true as your filter, because when you're thinking about who we're trying to pull data for, these students have already ended their enrollment in the summer school. And so because of that, we want to make sure that our filter has removed the active today, because there could be some students that were part of your program, but that had no showed for the current year, so they're not active. So we can't guarantee that that would include everyone. But as long as your context in the upper right-hand corner is the summer school that you are looking at. Now, I know you're probably thinking, well, what if I had multiple summer school calendars? Then you can also add a calendar and maybe filter by SS in the calendar. We're going to try that and see. But under school calendar, can click on name and drag it over. So any fields you want to add is there.
You could just double
Oh
click.
yeah, look at that. And so you can add a filter at the top. You can filter, ooh, or the calendar type. If you add S, look at Erin, she's so smart. If you add the type, and this is all under school calendar, you'll notice there on the left-hand side in the field options that she's chosen, it was school calendar. And then she added name and she added type. Now, when you set up your school calendar, everyone had to check that it was a type of S or summer school. You also had to check a box that said summer school. And if that field's there, you could do that and do a 1 also. But needless to say, you can narrow that down. And then up at the top, she added a filter for type equals S, and that's going to give you all of those calendars. So if you are needing to run this for multiple summer school calendars, you may want to change your context for 24-25 to all schools. And then you will filter out the S's, and that should give you all of the different calendars that you have. And I say all this because you're like, why are you going through all this? It's so that you can then go select that and choose a CSV and export that out into a format where you at least have the students that were in attendance. So that's only part of it. And so then the rest of it you can pull out in other formats. Anything else on that, Erin, that I missed? Or questions on this quick part before we show how to import it?
I don't think I had anything else.
And I know we're working with Kelly's questions, but
yeah.
Okay. All right. So once you have your file, like we already showed you the file itself, where you pull the data viewer out or create an ad hoc if you're more comfortable with that, whichever way. The point is, get your list of students that you need to make sure that you're going to have a program for. Now, this is just for the program piece for right now. And remember, this file should include all those that attended and that were offered. And so if they were offered and declined, make sure that that parent declined column has a 1, and then everyone else should have a 0. Once you have your file saved as a CSV, now we're going to go in and do that federal update wizard option to where you can take that file and add them all at one time. So that's going to be back under student information. And we're going to go this time under Program Administration, and it's called Federal State Program Update Wizard. I keep saying import, but it's not. It's an update, sorry. So this is under Program Administration and Federal State Program Update Wizard. From here, you'll have a list of all the different federal and state programs that you can work with, but you're going to select Summer Education from the dropdown. And we're going to use the import file option because we already have a file available for us to use. So we're going to leave import file as our selection, and then we're going to click next. And so I do see your question. Only the students that were enrolled in the program will be pulled in the filter. That is correct. And then you'll need to add any of the students that were offered to attend the program, but the parent declined. So all of those have to be accounted for the federal. That was part of the requirements in the reporting. And so that's why whatever list that you have, you'll have to pull both.
Luckily, you don't have to create an enrollment for them.
No,
you just need to have their number in the file and then those required fields along with parent decline. But you do not have to create an enrollment for them. We will just create a program for them through this import process.
And you don't have to add an assessment for those that were declined either. That was another part I did not mention, sorry. So in that file for the parent declined, you only have to have the parent declined, the priority offered, and the start and end dates. Those are the only fields that you have to have in the file. So their student number and the name to help you, but the priority offered does have to be there. Parent declined would be a 1, and then the start and end date. Oh, and the educational program. Sorry, I said everybody had to have that, but that student wouldn't need the assessment information for that. So that's for the parent declined. If they did attend and they were enrolled, you do have to have the assessments there. Okay, so once we're in the program administration, we chose the summer program from the drop down. The first thing we're going to have to do is create a map. And really, it's just something that you will go back and use maybe later on in future years, but it's we have to have an import mapping that just is what we use when we're aligning this program and this file together. So you're going to select new under this the second screen here. And you're going to name this mapping something that will help you know what we're using. So we used HB47 SE program. It just helped us know this was for the summer education program. And this one was specific to HLP or the Helene recovery. You'll make sure that your file type is comma delimited. Remember, because we just saved it as a CSV. And then, of course, the identifier for the file will be that student state ID. That is the same as their student number. Those are the same exact fields in the database. And then you'll want to make sure that you select source file includes header rows. Most of us probably include that because we were creating that file. We exported it, etc. We have that information. Then once you have those fields added or selected, then you're going to click Save. And so now you have your file mapping named, available. Next, it's already selected. So then right from there, you'll choose your file and select that CSV file that contains your programs. And then click Next. Here's the fun part. This one, let me just tell you, I didn't know how to do this 2 days ago, and Erin showed me one time, and I feel like I've done it 1,000, and it works great. I love this tool. So if you're a little worried about it, it's great. I think that the way that it shows you every step and how you're mapping really is going to help make sure that you feel confident about what you're importing before you click. And it lets you test a couple times to make sure that what you're doing is what you want to do. So I love that about this tool. If you don't like anything else about Infinite Campus, I think you'll learn to really, really love this particular tool. Okay, sorry. So we're going to select state ID, which will be our student number. or however you identified it in your export file or your saved CSV file. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner that your import file information is listed. So you can use that as your, this is, if I don't remember what my columns were, it shows you. And it shows you exactly what data is included in there, so you know exactly what you are using to map to the fields within Infinite Campus. But as you select the import file column, you'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, you get those mapped fields already out, and it's going to add them in one column at a time as you're selecting those mapped fields. So we always have to do that state ID. That's what we said we were mapping on. Then we come down to the meat of the file itself. So of course you'll see anything in red with that asterisk means it's required, but we know that before the state reporting purposes, we have a few more fields that we have to make sure are included. But in the start date dropdown, you will select the matching file, import file field. So in this one, we did start dates. We kept it fairly simple. The next thing you have to make sure you do is map those fields. This is where we want to make sure that we are putting the date formats in the right format for your file. So if you did forward slashes or you did dashes or however you added those in, and you can look at the upper right-hand corner just to know exactly how you had those dates entered. So Erin's going to select the forward slash option and click Save. And as soon as you select how it's going to map, it will automatically fill it in according to the student ID there. Then we're going to select the end date, same thing, match it up with the import file information and map that field and format that date. Then you'll map the other fields. So we'll do comments. The comments is the only one that you aren't required to set a value or map to because it's going to be a free form text field. For the assessment used, because if you had more than one, when you selected one, you can click on that box again and you can select the second option. So you'll notice here that Erin has chosen both of those assessment used columns from our import file. And when you go to map those fields, you have the option of whatever is in the file in any of the columns that you included will show up here in this drop-down option. So we have the IRDM math, and so she'll just choose that same mapped field that will be selected whenever that goes into the program information on that student's record. So then she'll select IRDR for reading and save. So this, if you only had one assessment, you would only choose one column and map that one field. If you had the more than one, you would see that. And you can see here how that information is going to go in. Just as you see it on that import file where you see the two fields, you'll see that information flowing together inside of that program, just how we showed it when you were adding an individual. For the educational program, you'll select the correct field from that and then map that to the only one you should have, which is HLP. That is what this whole setup is for this time. So we'll make sure that we have that in there. And then that parent guardian declined, you'll make sure we map that. And here is where we will say that if it's a 1, you're going to check the box. And if it's 0, you're going to leave the box unchecked. So that's why we said 1 and 0, just in all kind of, is that called binary? Anyway, all kind of coding. A 1 means check and a 0 means don't check. It's kind of like a true false for a radio button or something. Click Save. Y'all are learning all kinds of things this afternoon. We're going to do our priority offered, where we then are going to map the different offerings that you had in your file. So here we can see the FP, OE, and SP. However you had them designated in your file will be on the left, and then what they need to match up with in Infinite Campus, the program itself, will be on the right. So once you've mapped those, you'll click Save. And now that we have mapped all of the fields, we're not mapping and we're not using the program exit status. We used the information of the enrollment for the exit information. So that's where we determined whether the student was promoted or retained within that summer enrollment. And so that was maintained through the actual enrollment. And for those that declined, did not need an enrollment, so that was okay. So we're not going to be mapping that one at all. It's there, it's part of the program, but we're not using it for today's or for this particular setup. Now that we have all of our maps completed, the next step is to actually test it. Please do make sure that you do this step. Don't just go and click, hey, add. Make sure you test it. It will download into a CSV file that you'll want to open. This is going to be nice because it's going to show you if there are any errors. So here I can see that we have 317 that will be written in, and then it gives you who all of those are in that new record section. And then we're going to have, it says we have one warning. And if you go to the bottom of the list, it will show you what that warning is or who that warning is about. And this one, it is telling you that it would have an overlapping record. So remember, we added an individual program for a student. And so when we were to try to add this in, because they were included in our file, it's not going to let us add another program that's overlapping. So I'm saying all that because if you pull the file of all the kids and you have some programs entered and some not, then you include everybody. That's fine. It's not going to let you put in an overlapping an overlapping program into that record. So if you are okay with that error, then you can move forward. However, if it's a data error, I know sometimes I would find one where there would be something in a random field at the end, like on a row, we had some extra data that didn't need to be included. And there was no student information associated with it. So there's no student number. And so there's a blank line, but it might have had a priority listed. You know, you go fill, you copy, you paste, it's fine. Either clean up that or just know that that's going to skip and nothing will import. See how great this little tool is it's kind of it's really good to help make sure that we're keeping up with the little common errors that we would run into. If you're happy with how that test looks, then now you can go back into the program itself or the update wizard. And you can click add or edit records. If you have a whole lot, which I don't know that very many of us did, you might need to batch queue that. But I think that for this purpose, it's probably, I did a whole lot for a district and I didn't need to batch queue. So I think add edit records would be just fine. It will do another download of a CSV. And this time, do take a look. Don't just take for granted that it's the same information. Just make sure you still see the same number of new records and the same number of warnings that you were aware of prior to, and there aren't any extra ones. Now, if you needed to check, you can navigate to one of those students and you can look at that program information in that calendar. Yes. Thanks, Erin. So Erin's going to select one of those students. And now we can see that the program information was added in. I would recommend doing in all schools and pulling up one of those parent decline students and making sure that you see that program in there. You can also do back in that data viewer, you could go back and add the program information and you can filter on the program contains Helene, Helene, and then that would give you all students that have a Helene program. And then you can look at it from that perspective too to make sure that they're showing up correctly. But if you needed to go make any edits, you can do that by clicking view and adjusting whatever you might need to here. Any questions on the program or anything that we didn't cover on adding a program?
So my question is if they've already put in RTI programs that kind of overlap this, it won't let it overlap.
I think they can have overlapping different types of programs.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's the whole point of it being in there. And I know several districts were doing both, like doing a trial on another program. So you should, as long as the educational programs are different, it should allow you to overlap. If it doesn't, let us know because we're very, in our testing and the ones we worked with, that we didn't have two different programs, but it should allow you to do it. It just can't be the same program.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Mm-hmm. And you could test that by just doing one student too, without doing the update.
Yeah.
Going through all that trouble.
So I'm sorry, I'm still hung up on the students that decline because they are not in their summer school. How do I pull them in to mark them declined?
So did you have an original list somewhere that you maintained of who you offered the program for, like even if it's outside of the system?
Yes.
Did it include student numbers?
Probably not.
Okay. You might be able to go into last year, like go into 24. They would have all been students that would have been in your enrollment in 24, 25. So
Yes.
you could go and do a quick student export of 24, 25 students that include their student numbers. Now, of course, you're going to get both. You're going to get anybody that was in 24, 25, right? But at least it would give you a student list where you could then match up name and student number, because then at that point you could have the list of the student number with their name and then match that to, well, on your outside list where you maintained who you offered, and then just fill in the fields that you need for the parent declined and the start date, end date, program information. And then you just import, because I know that Erin was in the district summer school when she did that import option. Actually, I think she was at all schools for 24, 25, but school context for that tool doesn't matter because programs are outside of calendars. So as long as you have their student number, you should be fine, as well as keeping all those other fields in.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you can actually import programs several times. So if you have one file that has all your declined, you could import that one first, and then go with your other file that has all the information about those kids that actually attended and import that one second, and that should work just fine.
And if you happen to include somebody on both, it won't let you do an overlapping enrollment for both of them, because that happened to me too. So just so you know. And if you happen to have a record where a student declined in one row and then accepted in another, it's going to go with the first one. And so if those show up on an error, please go back and check those and make sure that they are listed in that program correctly. So I had that happen a couple times that I was importing as well. Okay, that is all we had for the programs piece. The next step, so that's step one that you'll have to do. I know it felt like a whole lot, but it once you actually have the data, especially if you're importing, it will go very quickly. And so once that program's there and you've confirmed that, the next step is to add in the assessments that were used during the pre and post of the program. And Erin, do you want to go through that part? Awesome.
Sure, I'll be glad to do that. So again, we do have in our knowledge base article the link for the assessments. It tells you the assessments that are here. And Kelly, we may need to talk offline just a little bit about your situation, because the honest truth is if it's not in this drop down, you can't import it. So we've got to see about adding things to that drop down. So we'll have to just talk about that offline and see what we're going to do about that. But if you do have one that is on this list, here is the list of the different ones that you can import. Now, all of these that are here on this list should now be assessments in your production site. So in a minute, we're going to go into the assessment center and we're going to look, and you're going to have actually all of these should now be, very, very recently, should now be in your production. So if you have Message Center, you probably have a big list of tests that just got added. They should be these tests. This is why they were added. So all of these will be there, but those are the ones that you can use. And it does talk a little bit about importing the assessment data. It really has kind of the same information we sent to you in the email that says, here are the minimum number of fields that you need. Now you can have more fields than this, and you can actually import more data in than this if you want to, but this is the data that is going to be used by the report that comes out afterwards of all the tests that happened before and after the Helene Recovery Program. And again, this file must also be in a comma delimited, formatted, comma separated values file. So that's the way that they import it. So let's talk about how to do that. Most of the time, your assessment information can come from the vendor itself. So the vendor has, of course, they probably took the assessments either online or it was sent to a vendor somehow, and they have that information there, and you can log in and download it. So if you have issues with that, let us know. We can talk through whatever issues we might have with that. But once you get that information, again, you'll have it in a file. I have the minimum amount of information in this particular file. Now, technically, you don't need the last name and first name in these files. I'm not going to map them. I'm not going to do anything with them, but I find it much easier to have the names in a file because I don't know everybody by their number. I just know them by their name. And so this helps me because I can go, oh, Blizzard, well, I don't think he took a test here. So as you're kind of looking through it, it just helps a lot. So I do have last name, first name in mine. You would have the date that they took the assessment. Now, each one of your assessments needs a different file. So if you have, for example, this is iReady Math. I don't have to put the assessment type in here. I did this just so I would know which one this was. And so here you can see that the assessment type is iReady Math, but really you just need to have one file that has all iReady Math in it. And then you will have a different file, a separate file that has all of your iReady reading in it if you did 2 of them. So you will need to have different files for each different type of test. However, you can have one file for any date that the student took this test. So you will see that I have Kaylee Almond right here at the top, and she took this test the first time on May 26th. I know that's pretty small. And then if I scroll way down here, because we have a lot of kids, you'll see that oh, and I took her off because I was messing around with it. But you'll see that the same kid can be down here at the bottom with a different date and the same test. So you can import them all at one time. Now, you can also import them 4 different times. So if you have a pre-math and reading, those might be 2 files, and then a post-math and reading, that might be 2 files at the end. Maybe you only did 1 assessment, and so you have the pre-assessment in one file and the post-assessment in a different file. You can do that way, but you can, if it's the same assessment, you can have 2 different dates in your file, and that's okay. So you can see I have all of the test scores in here. So let's talk about how we get that in. Again, just like your program information, you are going to want to make sure that this is a comma separated values file or a comma delimited file. So you'll want to make sure that that is the type, and then you would save that. So let's talk about where we go to do this. I'm going to back out just a minute so I can get to my menu that's nicer. But we are going to be in student information again, and we are going to go over under assessment administration, and then we're going to go to assessment center. And assessment center is where you do all things testing. So you'll click on assessment center. It's going to have a list of all of the different tests that you have in your system. So you'll see all of your EOGs, WIDA, all those state testing things. But now you will also see some of your tests in here that we had in our drop down for Helene recovery programs. So you'll see M-Class and iStation and Renaissance Star and NWEA MAP growth. So you'll see all those different tests. For me, in our testing site, we only added 1, well 2. And so we only see those, but you'll see all of them. You're going to find the test that you gave, that you have in the file you're trying to import, and you're going to click on it. So iReady Math was in my file, so I'm going to come here to iReady Math. I'm going to click on it. This first part is just the setup of the test. Now, this was done by the state. You don't have any control over it. So you can't change this part of it at all. So this very first page, you can look at it and you can kind of see what that looks like, but there's nothing on there that you can change. So really what you want to do now is just at the bottom, click on Save and Next. When you do that, it's going to ask you to select your data file to upload. And so you can click on upload. You will find that data file that you created. And so I've got all these downloads now. So I'm going to find my summer assessment example upload is the one that I need. My source file did include a header. That's the name of each column across the top. And so my file did include a header. So I'm going to check that box. And then very much like the programs that ask you, hey, what are you going to match on? How am I going to tell which kid is which in the system? And we do that by student number. And so you can choose student number here. State ID, same thing. So state ID and student number are really contain the same value for your students. So you can choose either one of those. I just have a preference for student number, so that's why it was selected on mine. Once you have done those two things, or three things actually, then you're going to click on Save and Next. Now we get into the mapping thing. Again, this is very similar to what we just saw in the programs. We do have some information at the top. It tells you what the required fields are. So you have to have student number and you have to have the date field. Those are the two fields you have to have. It tells me here's the source file, the format. I see 7 columns. I see 640 rows. So it tells you a little bit about the information that it sees in your file. And then you come down here and you say, okay, these are what I'm going to actually import. Now, it tries to match them up for you already. So that's a difference between the programs and the assessments, is it says, oh, well, these names are very similar, so I'm going to try to match up certain things. And so what you will want to do is you will want to make sure of two things. Number one, you're going to want to make sure that all of the database fields are correct. So here's my column header, student number. So that was in my file that I'm importing. And so I want to map it to a certain database field. And if I click down the drop down arrow here, I can see all of the different options that I could map it to. But I'm going to map it to student number. That's what we said we wanted to map it to. So I'm going to choose student number here. Now, last name, first name, I'm not changing the last name or the first name for any of these students. So I don't want to map those. And so I'm just leaving those completely blank. There's no mapping there whatsoever. You may need to delete something out of there. So in other words, it may have last name in here. And you can just come here and click on the X to clear it out. You'll notice that when I did this, this green check went away. When you first do this, not everything will be green checks. You may have a red X here and there. And that just means it needs some more information before it can map it. But it does remember it from time to time. So because I've done this before, it remembers what I put in before and it does it for me. So that's nice if you have to do it multiple times, if you need to import multiple different files. So I'm not going to map my last name or first name. Then I get to the date. And you want to make sure that it is score.date is the field that you want to import into. This is one that will probably have a red X for you. And so you can click on options here. Probably what it wants you to do is tell you what format that date is in. And so just like before in our programs, we have different options and you're going to choose the date format that your date's in. And so this is mine with the little slash marks in there. And so I'm going to save. Now, the next one is raw score. We have really two different scores that we have, two different types of scores, and that's going to be your raw score and your percentile. Those were the two things that they determined they wanted to report on. So your raw score here should map to your raw score. So use your drop down, make sure that says raw score. This one here tripped me up the first time I did this, because that looks like it maps just fine. But tricky, there's also a percent in here. And the first time I did it, it mapped to percent and not to percentile. So you will want to make sure that you use this drop down and that you find and make sure that that is percentile for your students' scores there. So you've got all that. This last one here that is assessment type, you do not have to actually do anything with that. So we're not mapping that assessment type. Remember at the very beginning, I clicked on iReady Math. So it already knows I'm importing iReady Math scores here. So I don't need to do anything with that assessment type. So I'm going to leave that one blank too. You can come up here after you've done that and say show only mapped columns. So the rest of that noise is not there for you to look at. But you don't want to do this until after you have kind of gone through and made sure everything looks good. And then we'll say show only mapped columns. Then once you have mapped all of those different things, then you say save and next. Now that we're in here, it's got more information. It says, hey, these are the things, one last time, hey, these are the things that I am going to map and import for you. You get a couple of options here. You can import them, which means that if the record doesn't already exist, it inserts the record into that particular student's assessments tool. Replace would actually go in there. It would look for that test on that student with the same date, and it would say, okay, if it's there, then I'm going to replace whatever's there. So if you mess up the first time, which I might have done, then you can actually come here and just replace it. Because remember, I told you that whole percentile thing? Well, the replace works beautifully because you can just replace it and it put it right in percentile and not in percent. So that allows you to do that. But the first time you do it, for sure, just choose import. That will get you what you need. Once you've done this, it gives you the option to save and test or save and batch test. This is like putting it in the batch queue if you batch test it. So I'm just going to say save and test because it's going to do it right now. And it doesn't take very long. Remember, I had 620 rows in my file, so that was quite a few rows. And it just took a couple of seconds here. And so when I click on open file, it opens it up again. It tells me this is a test. I didn't write anything to your database. It tells me how long it took. So you see about 3 seconds it took to try to do it. It told me, hey, I found 602 different valid records inside of here, and I didn't find any errors. So there's no errors or warnings here. If you do find errors or warnings, the descriptions are over here and they're very good. Like they tell you exactly, like this student already has a duplicate record, or this student has an, for programs, it was an overlapping record. So the error messages are nice and detailed. So I've tested it now and I've looked at that to see exactly what that does, and I'm good with all of that. So now I click on next. And it gives you one last time to say, this is exactly what I want to do. If you have tested it and you're all good, then you can go ahead and click on save and import. And that's actually going to do what you asked it to do. In my case, import those records that were in that particular file mapped to those particular fields. So now I can open the file and it tells me, took a little bit longer this time because it actually did it. So it took about 8 seconds to get those 600 records in, and it put in the 602 records for me, and I didn't have any errors or warnings. And so now when I pull up one of those students, I would expect to see the data. Now, I'm going to tell you of an issue that we have seen in this particular one. I'm in my summer school here. If I just go pull up one of these students, I chose my file had every student in there, so I should have assessments for every student. So if I want to check this, then I would choose my student. I go up to student information, and then under general, they have an assessment page. And so under assessments, you can see here that I have my iReady Math. And when I look at it, I have a percentile, I have a raw score, but I don't have a date. And so we're trying to figure that one out. And we will send out an email as soon as we figure that one out. But right now, I know it imported the date. The date is there, but it's not showing. So I think you're fine to go ahead and import your information. And then we're going to just figure out how to make this date show. So if you have questions about that, let me know. And Kieran's thinking maybe we wait. I don't know, as far as the date goes.
Well, I was just wondering, did that student not have 2 records?
Probably not if it was at the top, because I stripped off the first several. Let's try one of these here. Okay, I stripped off the first several for my testing that I was doing earlier. So here you can see, but thank you for that, because I can point this out that we did have 2 different rows for this particular student in here. And I have I can click on one and I can see the percentile raw score. This should be the first date. And then the second one here is the second date and the percentile and raw score that they made afterwards. So again, we're going to work on that date piece and try to figure out why it's not working. We'll put a ticket in with Infinite Campus so we can find that out, and then we will let you know so we can make sure that that information is correct. But that's where you would actually go look for it for that particular student there. I can't ever get this thing to go away. Go away. There we go. So now, oh, I just closed it and go back into training. So now you should have, for all of your students that are in district summer school, we now have both the program attached to every student and the assessments attached to every student, because we have imported both of those things. Again, all of those things can also be done manually. So if those things were added manually, the assessment scores can also be done manually. All that's perfectly fine. If you did want to do it manually for a student, you would pull out the student, go under assessment, and then you can click on new. And then you would choose the test from here and go on and put the information in. So that's also possible, but probably a lot of data entry that you can just do all at once by importing. So anything else, Karen, that you can think of from an assessment point of view?
No,
right.
I think that covered. Any questions that anybody has about that process? I'm sure you've done it before with CPR.
Mark has a good question about these will only show in the summer schools and not their regular calendars. These are actually attached to the student. So anywhere that student is now, like this year, because they've been through the summer school and then they went to school somewhere. So when you pull them up now, you'll be able to see this score in their history program also.
They work outside of calendar context, so they follow that student.
Yep. And as a matter of fact, I'm thinking these might move back and forth between districts also, since they are a state test that's published down just like the other ones. So,
but please do not panic if you had a student that no-showed and you already transferred the record and that record was there. So just, it's okay. Mm-hmm. That we're just now getting this information in. It's okay.
That's right. Yep. No need to request records or anything like that.
No, or send records or anything like that. This is just for this state
internal reporting.
Yeah.
And speaking of reporting, so that is the next step to this process. Yay. Once you get all the data in, and these are the last two steps to getting the data in, then there is a summer education extract that you can run, and you should run. And I'm going to let Karen talk about that part.
Oh, I get that one. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So in the slide presentation, there is a link to the Infinite Campus article about the extract itself. And so it will walk you through all the requirements that a student has to meet to be included on that program. That's going to be that first section. And then a couple of key tips. And so a student has to have had an enrollment within the calendar under setup to be included, have the program, whether even if it was parent decline. So I know that's kind of rolling around in some of our minds because it was in mine, but that student should still show up in a declined report there. And then they have to have had an enrollment and program calendar overlap. So those are some of the criteria that it's kind of matching on. When you're running this extract, do make sure that you're in the 24-25 calendar. It just makes it a little bit easier. It makes it a little bit easier when you're looking at running the report. So if you are in the 24-25 year, I'd probably, if you have multiple calendars that you did for summer, go ahead and be at all schools. It will just, again, help make sure that we're looking at the context in that right format. So if we go to our main menu, we're going to go down to reporting in our menu. And this is going to be under NC State reporting, and it's called NC Summer Education Extract. And so this is probably one that you just saw pop up within the last week or so. It just kind of came out there. It gives you a few of, again, the requirement pieces of information. For this, there is no submit. Okay, you will generate the report, verify the information is accurate, correct any things that you see or not. And then on October 15th, and I don't know if we have a time, the data will be pulled. I don't know.
I would
Earlier
assume
dropout was
after
very
close
specific.
of business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually it's after
Dropout
close of
was-
business.
Yeah. Close of business. So just make sure that you are aware of that. So that is kind of our deadline. I was asked earlier if there will be an extension. I do not believe so, unless there's something we don't know. But as of right now, the due date is October 15th. When you are in this report, a really key feature is because our active year is 25-26, make sure that in this setup section that you turn off show active year only. It will help your headaches. Make sure that you turn that off so you can see all the years, and then select the 24-25 year. Now you can expand that and only select the calendars that include, or the schools that include a summer school calendar, or even just the summer school calendar itself by expanding out each of those schools. That is up to you. To make it a little easier, I would just select all of them. That way you don't have to worry and break that down into the smaller groups. Now let's talk about the different report options. Now, if you looked in the article has 5 PDFs that list out in this report editor in the extract type that walk you through what data it is looking for, how it's pulling it, and what's included on each of those reports. So if you look at each one of those, I would focus on the fields, and it tells you what the path is, the database field. It's really actually very nice. I don't think we've had this in the past for some state reports. So this is really nice for us to know what pieces of information are going to be included on that particular report. So if you're curious as to what information should be there, I also encourage you to take a look at it, because when we run this report, if you're noticing that you're missing people and you shouldn't be missing people, or you're missing data and you shouldn't be missing data, and they've met the criteria that you're seeing in these requirements, then that's going to need to be a campus support case, so that we can let them know that they're not seeing all the students in that report. So this is a really great resource to help us know exactly what information is being included in our state report extract and which fields to look for. So if you're finding or missing a student, then just go check in this requirements to see which one I might be missing. So you do have those same reports in the drop down. So you've got your summary, your detail. Now the summary is going to show all of the students in the program that attended. So that's the students that, I believe that's right, the students that had an active program and attend active enrollment. The participation detail is going to show you all of those students. Did it have declined and not declined? I can't remember. I'm sorry. I will look back through those requirements to confirm, but these are the different reports. I encourage us to look at all of them and ensure that the information we're seeing on there is correct. Make sure that you look at the assessment report after you've imported those assessments and information is showing as expected. The attendance report to ensure that how your attendance information came out looks correct. Check and spot check a couple. Make sure that what we're looking at is meeting the requirements that are the state's going to be pulling. So that's why we're looking to ensure this information. So you'll select your extract type that you want to run. We'll stick with summary or detail for now. We'll see what's on it. Then you're going to the start and end date. It defaults, I believe, June 1st to the day before you start. I can't really, every time I've come into one of these, it's been 6/1 to 8/24. We recommend entering in the start and end dates of your program, or at least the start date of the program. And if it goes past the end date, that's okay. Like if it went to 8/24, but I'd recommend it was 8/8, Aaron. I'd recommend doing the extending of your report, because that's the only enrollment or program information that you'll have. So we did 5/26 to 8/8.
Also, just a note that if you're running the assessment report, it does pick the post assessment. If there's more than one assessment, it picks the post is the one closest to the end date, and the pre is the one closest to the start date that's on this screen. So it is important whenever you're talking about the assessment report in particular that these dates are correct. So
yes. Then in the output options, you do have the option to generate now or submit to batch. Again, depending on the amount of data that you're trying to pull. If it errors out when you try to generate now, just make sure you do submit to batch, and that will put it down in the report queue. Click refresh until it shows a completed option, and then you'll be able to click on the completed link in that report title queue. You do also have the option for HTML or CSV, and I noticed, I don't know if Erin noticed, that every time I run this one, it is defaulting to CSV, which is pretty cool. I haven't had that for one of those state reports. So if you want to view it in your browser, you're welcome to, or you can click CSV and be able to sort and filter as needed. Then you're going to click generate on that report. Ooh. And here is an example of the report that was the detail. So here we do see more than one line per student because this program for these students had 2 assessments associated with it. So that's why we're seeing 2 lines. We see 1 line per assessment. We then see their the program start and end date. So we see the first columns are including our program information. And then our second, or if we move past the district name, we'll see our previous enrollment information. So this is showing you the last school that they were in with and the enrollment status that they had in previous enrollment. So PE is going to represent previous enrollment. You'll see their start and end dates for that, as well as their end status and start status. And then we'll see their summer school enrollment information. So I believe this would be only those students that attended then. Sorry about that, misunderstood. But this will be your summer school calendar information with their summer school start status, end status, and dates. Make sure those are correct in there. So as you enrolled the students and as you ended their enrollments for the summer school program, make sure that end status is correct. Also, all of the start statuses should be an E1 here, so make sure that that information is also showing up correctly. And then you'll see their grade code that is listed. So we see the grade code over there. That should match up with what they were during that summer school record. So I know ours say 3. I know that's not an accurate portrayal of what this program does. It was only 4th grade to 8th grade, but that's okay. This is just a training site. But you'll see that grade information there. So that's kind of the detail, and then the summary is itself a summary. Run each of these and make sure that you're seeing the data that you should be seeing. We should be seeing all of our students in that district, or excuse me, with an enrollment in that program. If you run the decline, you should see all those students that you added that decline program to. And then the attendance will only include those that attended, and assessments only those that had an assessment. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at those reports. Again, this data is set to be pulled on October 15th. So as you're working on doing the program additions and the assessment additions, that just keep that deadline in mind as you're adding that information in. And if you need support with that or any of the information, please reach out to me or Erin. And we're happy to help with however we can to help try to ease that load with getting that in. But hopefully you have that information in a format actually that's already going to be usable, and it won't be quite as overwhelming, hopefully.
I did want to point out real quick that this end status at the end of summer school is very important because that's going to contain that promoted or retention at the end of summer school. So that's how that will be pulled out, is do you have a PR here for promoted or an RT for retained? I think all of mine are promoted because I just ended them here. So that's the end status of your summer school record. And so the end reporting for your summer school as it looks for retentions after summer school or promotions after summer school, that's where that will pull. The other thing is it contains these columns for end action for your primary enrollment and for your summer school enrollment, but we don't use them. And so they will be blank, and it's okay that they are blank. There's no problem there if you are missing that information because we don't put that information in. So just, I wanted to point that out because you're going to be like, well, it's blank, I'm missing something. But in those particular 2 columns, you're not missing anything. So, yep, I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Also, don't get caught up in that W1 that you see there for our previous enrollments. This is a training site. Yours should have PR, RT, whatever you used when you ended enrollments at the end of last year. So it keeps pointing out at me because I know we're not supposed to have that at the end of a year. And so I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware. But if you do see blanks like that next one down, it is a blank or a blank end date for the previous enrollment, please go investigate those because that should not be there. They should have ended their enrollment last year. That was one of those steps that everyone had to do. Okay, I believe that is all that we had as far as the program and the assessment and then the final report that we've come across. Does anyone have any questions about any of the items that we've covered today or anything about the program or calendar or anything from summer school?
We had schools that mentioned that they were working on this over the summer. And if they are not showing up on that report,
If
could it be that they put it probably in the wrong school?
Maybe. Now, I will go ahead and tell you that we have seen some issues with that extract. So what I want you to do is just verify, yes, they have their summer school calendar. Yes, on calendar information, it is marked as a summer school calendar. So that's really important that that's on that calendar information, that you see the enrollments and you see the program attached to those students. And so if you see those different things, I want you to put a ticket into Infinite Campus and let them know that, hey, these things exist, but I'm not seeing the students on this particular extract.
Yeah, because I wasn't expecting to see them all, let's be honest. But I was expecting to see a good handful. So to not see anything's a little disconcerting.
Did they do programs? Because that would be the only thing that we hadn't really went over with everyone until just recently. And so even though they may have had the enrollment, they may not have had the summer education program. And that could be why they're not showing up. So if they add that in, and then you run that extract and they're still not showing in all the other boxes Erin mentioned or checked, then go ahead and do place a campus support. But they're going to ask, again, we know that for this report, they have to have the enrollment in the summer school calendar and they have to have that program enrollment as well that's attached to that Helene Recovery Program.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if they put the RTA one in and not that one.
That also could be it. Yes.
Okay.
Because this one is very
charge
specific
RTA
for
ones,
Helene.
so-
This one, even though it says summer education, it only shows Helene. It doesn't show RTA if you did RTA. So
Right. Yeah. And that might be what they were putting in because I do remember a few of them talking about the attendance items and things of that nature. And so I wonder if they were doing those and not the Helene ones.
Will y'all have office hours on the 14th in case we run into problems before the 15th for this?
We're available, whatever you need.
I've got to get with some central office folks and it just scares me that they'll wait till the very last minute.
Yeah. Yeah, just reach out to us. I don't know that we'll necessarily have office hours, but we're available if you need us and we can
Okay.
help with whatever questions that arise.
Okay.